The style that I've sort of created and has evolved and is kind of my signature look is derives and is highly influenced by Americana folk art. And while it's not true folk art, the elements that make up the various pieces, come from that particular slice of the art world. I'm heavily influenced by the quilt patterns, for example, and that, of course, I don't think there's any better example of Americana than the American quilt. My grandmother was a master quilter, and she probably had as much influence as anybody on me as a young budding artist when it came to understanding composition and balance and rhythm and color coordination and that sort of thing. All of the elements that go together to make up a respectable piece of artwork. So I still to this day think back on the various things that she told me and just the kind of influence she had on me as I was basically sitting at her feet while she was doing all these masterful quilt works. My mother had an influence on me too. She was very artistic, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household where they created an atmosphere that was just right for a young artist like myself. Now, in addition to the quilt works, we have what we generally, I guess, loosely call Pennsylvania Dutch or rose malling, and it's comprised of what was initially classical design work taught classically in Europe, and it had a number of different forms. It was initially attributed to the Norwegians in these various Norwegian valleys, and they developed this very ornate kind of stylized floral patterns that they would decorate everything from old furniture to the houses themselves. And it became, it congealed into a recognizable art form. And then there's, and a lot of that was like Telmark, actual rose malling, and that sort of thing. Now, there's also similar iterations of that throughout Europe. You had the Dutch Hendelopen and the German Fraktur, which is very prevalent in the early colonies that had the German influence, like Williamsburg, for example. You'll see that all over. So I take elements of that, stylize it into my own way, and put it all in combination. So altogether, it's not just focused on one particular element of folk art. It's a whole combination of things, along with a very wide color palette that stay in sort of the earthy tones that you would expect to find in folk art. The pieces themselves are stylized in the folk art style, which means they're a little bit out of proportion, a little bit primitive, but in the right way. And that in itself is one of those art forms that, through people who are not trained artists making things that they considered pretty, has developed into a recognizable art form itself. And so I'm heavily influenced by that. And so a lot of the things that I create, well, like for example, this is this carousel here. As you can see, I mean, it's got a wide-ranging color palette. You've got the elements down here along the bottom that would simulate a border patterning that you would see on quilts. You've got some of the quilt patterns in various places on the piece. And then you've got, inside here, you've got some of this stylized rose malling with the signature comma strokes and that sort of thing. So this is what generally goes together to make the overall motif, I guess you could call it, that I apply to these different pieces.